You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Hi, I'm Davey.
And I'm Mitch.
And we are the Bargain Bin Gamers. Oh, we finally got it. Those watching the uncut version on Patreon will be glad that this has finally started because we completely forgot how we introduce ourselves. But anyway, before we go on, I would just like to say that this is the podcast, YouTube show, and occasional Twitch stream where we put the gay in gaming.
While also looking after your hip pocket.
Oh,
Nailed it.
what a great new intro.
First try, by the way.
That's right. Not barely anything insulting in it anymore.
No, none.
Which I'm so pleased about.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well.
Anyway, here we are. It's a beautiful sunny Saturday at time of recording, and it's federal election day here in Australia. We've just voted.
Fucking oath, we did. My voice has been heard.
We have just exercised our democratic right. And I must ask, did you get a democracy sausage when you went to vote this morning?
I didn't, because I live in one of those bloody left-leaning, bloody soy boy cuck places with all the gays, and there was no sausage.
They didn't do a
devastated.
sausage sizzle.
Not at the bloody library.
Oh, was that the library?
Girl, it was at the library.
There wasn't even anyone outside with a barbecue?
There were just people trying to put
This is why
pamphlets in my hand.
That's why you got to go to a public school. The PNC, they get all on it. That's what they were doing over here at St Kilda Primary.
Well, shout out to Toorak Library, by the way, because you took me 2 hours to get my voting done. And I could have just skipped the line. But anyway, next time I'll go to a primary school and get myself a sausage. Did you get one?
No. But they were making them. So I had the dog and he was going crazy. But it was such a cool performance. They had, super, super gay school. All the lesbian mums and gay dads were out in force, which was great. But it was so cool because one of the daughters of the people cooking the barbecue was going up and down the line and like taking people's orders and running over and getting it for them.
That's
so
cute.
they could get their sausage sizzle in the line.
That's quite cute.
Yeah. And then occasionally she'd do the splits for us. It was great. I was like, all right, slay.
Because what else are we doing?
Yeah.
On this fine Saturday.
Yeah. For our international listeners, just so you know, a democracy sausage is exactly as it sounds. It's a sausage you eat on election days, and it's delicious.
Yes.
In a piece of bread with a bunch of onions and some sauce.
It does demote democracy, for those who might be unaware.
Demote democracy?
Demote?
No. That's
Denote.
Yeah.
I'm trying my best.
You are trying your best. How have you been? How's recovery going?
Been good. I miss doing anything heavy lifting wise, but I can walk around and run around, which is quite nice.
Okay.
Yeah, back to work, back to life. Can't just sit on my ass and play Emerald Sea Glass anymore, but
I know.
it's life.
I think we need to explore a little bit more about this Emerald Sea, this ROM hack.
It will be coming.
Yeah.
I promise to anyone who's eger to watch or listen, I will be making
apparently we're going to do some Mitch-only episodes because it's only fair. It's...
For those just listening and not watching, I did just do a little eyebrow raise at a funny time.
Yeah. What you did get to do, though, during some of your recovery time was you got to play 2 special little demos. What were they?
It was a classic game, which was Small Town Emo, which was one of the highlights of my year so far in terms of gaming. And another very good classic game, which was Shelf Life, which is a fun little mystery detective love game, which
mystery detective love game.
Which I personally love because I also love dating men far above my age who probably shouldn't be dating me, which I got to do in this game, which was really fun.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It's from Dream Daddy to this. We're like,
what's the difference?
Do they need
sometimes?
to make another game for you to play after this?
I mean, yes, please.
Yeah.
But yes, and the exciting part for all of our listeners and viewers is we do have the co-producing group.
Oh my God. Wow, you really know the industry lingo, don't
That's
you?
me.
How about we say we've got the developers of the game. From Knife Games, we met them before at PAX. We love them to death, and we're so excited to have them back on the podcast. So let's just bring them on and end their pain because they've just been sitting there listening. We've got Thomas and Nate. Although you prefer Tom, though, right?
No, not this. No, I don't have a preference. I don't have a preference. I'd find one either.
I'm just used to
Everything you
chatting
read in
to
the
you.
papers is a lie. Yeah.
I'm just used to chatting to you on Discord where you're Tom.
Yeah. That was such an arbitrary thing that I did, and now it's like, are you Tom? Are you Thomas? Who are you? It's an identity crisis every time. Can't you just mutually be fine with both? I don't know. Maybe I'm rare like that. But either is good. Either is good.
I'm
interchange.
I don't know if we'll be able to resolve this identity crisis for you in the next hour, but we'll loop back with you in a future episode.
It'll be my story arc for this podcast episode. Will be the name thing. So
yeah, I've been personally following your journey for quite a while. Small Town Emo, which is your Game Boy game that you can play the demo of on itch, is probably one of the first like proper queer indie games that I came across. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I need to get these people on the podcast. And then we met you at PAX and you were showing off your other game, which is just one of the most beautiful games I think I've played just in terms of its visual and art direction, which is Shelf Life Art School Detective, the investor dating extravaganza. So what have you, what was it, November? No, October. We saw you in PAX. What have you both been up to since we last caught up with you?
I mean, I think we were just saying to you pre-pod, like, we kind of went straight off of PAX to South by Southwest Sydney. So we did like 2 events in Australia. Then we got our little kind of end of the year break and immediately kind of started ramping up to go to GDC in San Francisco. So for a couple of kind of like stay-at-home worms like ourselves, it felt like we'd sort of packed 3 international diva-licious events in pretty quick succession, which was great and very productive and useful, but also like super draining. I think we'd rather be in our caves like banging rocks together and licking moss off the walls. So we've been doing a lot of faux extroversion, pitching our games, meeting other devs, kind of networking, adding people on LinkedIn, which is a thing. You got to get on LinkedIn. It's really great. I say with no hint of derision at all.
I'm on LinkedIn in a professional capacity, so LinkedIn's probably a very different experience for me.
My LinkedIn experience was not a good one. So
yeah, it's sort of like business Facebook. I find it fascinating. But yeah, no, we've been busy. I mean, to be fair, like as you said, we have Small Town Emo and Shelf Life Art School Detective to work on, and so we're doing our best to kind of get the sort of final finished release of Small Town Emo done this year, and then I guess our main kind of like scheme, if you will, for Shelf Life is to try and find a publisher or some financing to kind of like get us locked in to finish it over the next kind of like year and a half. So we've got 2 pots on the boil. One of them, maybe ready to eat soon. The other one might burn. Who knows?
Which one's been in development longer? Is it Small Town Emo?
Shelf Life has been in development longer because we started thinking about it in 2017 and then we started working on it proper in like 2018. But the first version of it, because the version that you've seen of it now is kind of like the sort of revived Frankenstein corpse of the old one, because the old one was more of like a sort of art school depression sim that was pretty boring to play. And then we sort of like put that down and then took a year to work on other projects, which is why Small Town Emo exists. And then we sort of came back to Shelf Life with like new energy, just because, after spending so long on a project, it kind of goes a bit stale.
And especially something that involves art and narrative and all that. I'm guessing if you drop it for a little bit, you come back like, oh God, what were we doing? Who were these characters?
Exactly that.
Why are they on MSN Messenger? What's going on?
Lolcats?
Yeah.
Why did I write that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Coming back to it was a nightmare.
And with that, though, you were mentioning how Shelf Life has been like the longer running game and you've used Small Town Emo in the middle. When it comes to the inspiration of Small Town Emo, I was really, really interested to know what the backstory was for that. I am just slightly too young to get every reference, but I know every reference, if that makes sense.
I get all of them.
Like, I had the MSN, I got the jumping the fence because I'm from like a really small town. Well, not the smallest place, but that was very me, like jumping the back fence to go and see a friend. Like I have
just your friends.
I have a hoarding mum. So I was like, ooh, I'm seeing a lot of parallels. So what was the inspiration for that game?
I guess, obviously, I'm ready to come out about it. I was, in fact, a gay emo in the mid-2000s. And I don't know if that shocks you. Yeah. I'm ready to admit it, finally. But no, like, in all seriousness, yeah, there's elements of, I guess you would call it like semi-autobiographical kind of content, right? So I'm from Blenheim, which is like a relatively small population town in New Zealand, like kind of the top of the South Island, known for like racist old people and growing grapes, I guess, is like some of the cool things about it.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's a difficult place like to grow up different, right? Like in a small town context like that. And I suppose like kind of, Nate and I were sort of talking before the game had kind of like been concepted. We were like, oh, it would be kind of interesting to make something like nostalgic. We'd heard of this tool for making games called GB Studio, right? Which is what it's made in. So we were thinking like, okay, we know you can make homebrew games for Game Boy. That's really exciting. What kind of nostalgic sort of feeling would we like to explore? What's something that's kind of interesting to both of us? We were thinking about kind of like, what was it like being a queer teenager in New Zealand in the kind of like mid-2000s? Obviously, emo was sort of at a popular, notorious even peak of interest at that point. So that was kind of like a no-brainer to sort of try and incorporate that into something. And I think that sort of complemented the kind of like GB Studio Game Boy output quite well. So it was like exploring our own personal nostalgia as well as kind of like looking at this tool that allows you to kind of like make these anachronistic games that are sort of like, they feel like, it could have been made back then and it runs on a Game Boy. So it's sort of like out of time and place. It felt like a good marriage of those two ideas. And I was obviously really interested in kind of like combining little anecdotes and ideas from like my experience being on MySpace. My MySpace name, this is like way too naughty for the podcast. I had never like kissed anyone or done anything romantic, but my MySpace name was Thomas Slut, which I thought was like really...
Well, we've definitely answered the question if it's Tom or Thomas.
Yeah, you really like to have a bit of an air of mystery about yourself.
Yeah. I had not had a boyfriend or done anything, so I was out there online doing doing nothing debaucherous at all, but I named myself in a very edgy way. In any case, yeah, I was like a little MySpace kid, loved MSN Messenger. I think there's a lot of little moments in the game that are inspired by like friends of mine or things that I'd done, as well as kind of like that drawing from the greater lexicon of the sort of like emo experience. I think, especially within that small town context where like me and my friends would get harassed like every day. You go into town wearing your, all black ensemble, your My Chemical Romance t-shirts and your kind of floppy fringe, and people will throw bottles at you from their cars. It was a war zone. It was crazy. So there's little aspects of that I've tried to put into this game that we sort of like, with Nate's help on the narrative too, tried to kind of also still make it feel like fun and accessible and not just kind of like focused entirely on what a negative time it was to be a social outcast, a queer person in a small town at this time, but also like what were the kind of like, interpersonal elements of that too. What was it like to have a crush on someone? What was it like to kind of make friends with people who understood you?
What I love about it is it's such a wonderful time capsule because it's like a Game Boy game, which is like 90s style, which is just such a timeless style of that top-down Game Boy RPG. But then the mid-2000s references, like you've got the MSN style instant messenger. You can play the Snake game on the flip phone. And all that kind of stuff. But yet, like, 2 times removed, like, but then kind of smashed together because, I don't know, growing up in that period, the 90s and the noughties kind of blended into each other. You've got very narrative-driven elements to it, but then you've got, like, lots of fun mini-game and RPG style and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, how do you kind of wrap up this game when you're trying to sort of describe it to someone, Thomas or Nate, whoever wants to kind of jump in there?
It's hard. Like, I think going back to what Nate was saying about our other title too, I feel like we have this tendency to make things that are walking sims essentially, but it's such a like unsellable, unsexy kind of. I mean, there's a certain kind of person that loves a walking sim, but it's not the genre that gets people, screaming and clapping and cheering and throwing lots of money at you. I think it's kind of got its own baggage there, considered, potentially boring experiences or kind of uninteractive, right? So I think for me, I don't mind calling it that, but I tend to prefer the term adventure game for both Shelf Life and Small Town Emo, because partially because it's such an obscure sort of genre that it can include a lot of things, including like definitely narrative elements, usually some sort of puzzle, maybe there's a little bit of a mystery or some kind of story arc and a bit of like exploration. But like adventure games, range from things like Ace Attorney on one end to like stuff that actually has an overworld where you walk around and do things in it. Like, I think that kind of, we like exist somewhere in that Venn diagram. So genre wise, I would say it's that. In terms of like how I like to describe Small Town Emo, I guess I think of it as, it's like a fan fiction that you can play. I feel like is the best way. It's like I have this thing where I will read fan fictions about things that I don't know anything about. So then it's just like a free gay story that I have no context on. So like, I don't know anything about Voltron. I went and read some Voltron fan fictions and I was like, this is like a free gay sci-fi story. I've got no skin in the game. I don't know what this is. That's the kind of experience I want people to have with it. It's like, oh, it's a queer like slice of life experience. Like, these characters have a bit of a history. There's like some stuff going on here that I can read into or not. I think you generally get the sense from stuff like that if it's a romantic story, the characters there'll be some tension there, maybe, some light internalized homophobia, and maybe they'll kind of figure it out by the end. So there's a predictability to it. But I think people who like these kinds of stories are looking for, something kind of soft and maybe uplifting too, right? So I think that kind of comes back to it's a slice of life. It's a bit of a rom-com. It's a little bit of a fanfic.
Mitch was just saying that, he understands the references from that time, but being the young, tender age you were during sort of the early 2000s, I was a young man during the time in which this game is set, and the experiences in it speak to me on a number of different levels. And it's not just the technology references, but it's also what the gay experience was like, because acceptance and equality was kind of getting a bit better, but it was still really, really scary to come out. And your main character has a crush on, the straight, friend, right? And the straight friend is just a lovely person.
He's so good.
He's handsome, and he's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, he's got like that boyish next door charm, and like, he's like the sun. This is how I thought about it. He's like the sun to my moon. Like I was trying to get into my emo phase while I was playing the game, and I was like, oh, I'm like the dark moon, and he's like the sun, and like I shine when he's out. I was really feeling the vibes while playing.
But I had that friend growing up. I had that straight best friend who I was secretly in love with, right? You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
And I feel like I've fallen in love with straight men a few times. I know you do daily.
No, I don't.
But
I fall in lust. I would love it.
But and so there were so many moments, especially when you kind of do there's lots of those beautiful little cut scenes and all that kind of stuff where, I just sort of think, oh yeah, geez, that unrequited, falling in love with the straight man and unable to tell him how you really, really feel. But maybe there might be some twists in the full version that we're not quite aware of.
Tension as well of like at the time that it's set, like gay marriage wasn't legal here, and I don't know if it was legal in Australia either back then.
It's only been legal here since 2017. So yeah.
Really, that's crazy. That's
you guys have had it a lot longer than we have. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my God.
And it was an interesting time to be it was an interesting time to be gay around that time as well.
Oh yeah.
Because you grow up thinking Australians are all really cool and laid back, and then you find out we're actually secretly like super conservative and like really strange. You're like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah, I kind of want younger queer people to be able to access like a very light simulation of what the experience of being closeted or being out was like in the mid-2000s a little bit too. to go back to what you were saying before about the kind of like dynamic, the sun and the moon between the two kind of like, I guess, main characters of Small Town Emo. Like one of the main things that Nate sort of like contributed to me narratively fixing was initially I had kind of like the protagonist was like a lot meaner to his crush in a way that kind of read weirdly. I don't know if you want to get into that at all. It was sort of weird.
It was just like he like constantly correcting him about words that he said wrong, which like it was a bit confusing, mostly just because it was unclear that the wrong words were wrong sometimes.
I was like getting into that kind of classic like pigtail pulling, you know, like, oh, you're always mean to the one you like kind of stuff. But I think it kind of diluted the mutual like foundation of their friendship, which I think is sort of important. Like, you know, there is something about, you know, having a kind of like earnest crush on a friend that's quite sweet at that age, I think too, when like people are still figuring themselves out. And so if you put in a lot of like weird bullying and other things, you can kind of like distort the flavors of the soup, if you will.
There was something I wanted to ask because I've noticed a through line with a lot of the different developers, see I nailed it that time, that we speak to about these indie queer games. And I think, Nate, you mentioned it where it was that the story was supposed to be like a lot more light and it wasn't going to be as like I guess like negative. How did you balance not only like it being a joyful story, because it is joyful, it's like a crush, and this is for both of you. It's like a cute little crush that you're falling in love with and doing adventures with, but it's also like really funny and quite poignant. So how did that balance happen? Because we've played a lot of queer games and they always seem to be quite well written and joyful. But how do you like get yourself into that headspace and make sure it's not going into like the bury your gay trope? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Everyone's going to die at the end of Small Town Emo.
I hope not.
Oh yeah.
I really like all the characters.
yeah.
But things really come through in the edit. Like if things are starting to get too depressing, or I don't know, because we used to be like when we were first working on games, we were like, oh, let's be very serious. Let's make sure we're doing everything correctly. And that was our first thing. And we just didn't enjoy working that way. It felt like way too serious and stressful and anxiety inducing. So now we start with the funny light stuff, and doing the funny light stuff sort of like I think earns you the depth. Like people are more ready to have that then. I think that it would be really hard to do it the other way around, where you've got the sort of like real scary, horrible, what it's like to actually grow up like that. If you're focusing on that first, it's really hard to weave in the humor and joy. I think that you've got to start with the joy.
I was just going to say, I think part of the reason we like it that me and Nate are both quite into Terry Pratchett and like the Discworld books. And I feel like there's a really good kind of balance of humor and kind of like irreverence and silliness. But there are always like moments in those Discworld novels and Pratchett stories that where you do get character depth and meaningful conversations about like what it is to be alive or to be different or to be, you know, shunned, or like they explore a lot of different themes, including queer themes in some of those books too. And yeah, I think that was kind of an inspiration for us. It has been like in the background of our minds about how to kind of get a good tonal balance of like silliness and depth. And not everyone makes stuff in that way either, but I think it's good to have a spread of queer creators making everything from depressing like torture porn that's super hard to consume but super important, and then like lighter stuff as well. Like I don't think, you know, we've had conversations with other devs where they're quite like, you know, some of the people making the heavier stuff get a little bit frustrated with those of us who are playing in the lighter like slice of life cotton candy space, and they're like, well, but it's horrible to be queer, like why are you making nice things? Which I can kind of understand, but I think there's room for everybody. I think there's no rule. Like we should be able to have the depressing, thoughtful stuff as well as the kind of like light, fluffy, whatever. I think it's a banquet and we can eat everything. Yum, yum, yum.
So to round out Small Town Emo before we get onto shelf life a little bit more, now you dropped something at the beginning there which got me very, very excited, which makes it sound like maybe Small Town Emo is close to being ready for a full release. Is that the case, or are we not quite ready to talk about that yet?
We keep going back and forth on it. I don't know. And Nate's kind of producing at the moment and trying to get me wrangled because like I've got to sort of do a lot of the finishing myself, and I'm so distractible. I love to procrastinate by working on anything but the thing I'm supposed to work on. But I don't know, Nate, do you want to say how far along we think it is?
I think that I think that it is possible, just because the game is set on Halloween. I think that it's entirely possible that we could launch it for Halloween if we wanted to do that, or earlier. But it really depends. It really depends. It depends on many factors. Yeah. I reckon that it's probably like 2 months of full-time work and then some playtesting, I think.
Have you got a Steam wishlist page for this one? Can we just like direct everyone a wish list to give you a bit of motivation, like to keep going?
Yeah, we're pretty close to 10,000 wish lists on Small Town Emo on Steam actually. So if we could rally the divas, and I think that would that would be good. That'd be cool.
and we'll include a link to the demo on itch as well. Everyone, you can play it in your browser, and it's a lengthy demo.
Yeah.
You haven't even finished it.
Oh, yeah. I know. And I've been like into it as well. Because, but the thing with games like this is that I walk to every like item and touch it and click on it. And I'm like, what does this interaction do? And that's why I was so like charmed by it, is because it's obvious that lots of thought has gone into kind of like the holistic making of the game. Like everything's got like a point of view, and even like small characters. I know your mum's not the smallest character, but I see so much of even my mum in her, which is so strange. She's an interesting character. She's kind of quirky and kind of funny, and
she's hilarious.
My mum or the actual mum?
Oh, Jodie's great.
Shout out, But yeah, no. And like, just, like I was walking around the block and I was seeing all these people doing things, and I just wanted to talk to all of them, and like I wanted to sniff every bin and like just do everything. I'm a Pokemon guy, so I wanted to click on everything because so I was I was obsessing over it. But I'm super excited to finish the demo, and I'm really, really excited to play the full game. It'd be a nice Halloween treat, actually.
We'll put out the
pencil it in.
Pencil it in.
Mitch's Halloween.
Shelf Life Art School Detective is like, it's almost like sort of FNAF games kind of like level up a little bit, because you've jumped into the homebrew scene with the Game Boy game. Which I played another one, which was Gas Station Story with Enzi, who spoke about what an inspiration you both were. But anyway, we're not talking about Small Town Emo. We need to talk about Shelf Life. But yeah, so you jumped into that, that beautiful kind of like, love letter to the Game Boy days and the early 2000s queer experience. But now you've moved on to Shelf Life, which is this 2.5D, mixture of retro, new school kind of graphics with a whole different art style, whole different set of characters,
whole different gameplay,
yeah, and a completely different tone. Still, very much your style, I think, in terms of who the characters are, and maybe we've talked a lot about Small Town Emo, but and hearing and ask about the elevator pitch again. What's the elevator pitch for Shelf Life? Yeah. How do you describe it to people?
We describe it, well, Thomas said earlier, we like using the adventure game genre point of saying that it is. So it's an adventure mystery game with dating sim elements about Johanna, who is a non-binary art student who has been accused of a gallery massacre, killing lots of artworks in the school gallery, and they've got 14 days to solve the case. But luckily, they are also an art psychic, so they can commune and jump into people's paintings. We sometimes say sexy Blue's Clues, Blue's Clues into the painting.
I had a note down, it was like Blue's Clues. Sexy Blue's Clues is even better, though.
Sexy Blue's Clues. So they do that in order to uncover secrets, and then they can also date all the suspects, because we thought, play Ace Attorney, you want to date all of them, but you're not allowed, so we're letting you.
Right.
So that's the elevator pitch.
You have a special term for the dates, though.
Yeah. Yes, investigate. You investigate the suspects.
You investigate the suspects. Yes. Which my first investigate the other day when I played the demo was the jock character who liked the painting. Which I think we both went for the jock character straight away.
Well, I immediately gravitate towards Yamato, but that's just because of who I am as a person, and I am very obviously that type of type of guy.
I don't know if you remember when we met you at PAX, I raved about how hot I thought Yamato was. he's a good looking man, I know, and he's kind of a bit dumb, which I'm into.
I'm also into as well.
Love him. Dumb and enthusiastic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Big. I like my men like I like my coffee. Big, dumb, and strong. So, for the characters themselves, the character you mentioned it just before, like it's obviously got like your stamp on it. Like between the two games, they're very different in certain aspects, but they definitely have a through line of like character-driven humor and character-driven story. What was the inspiration around making an art detective dating sim? Because that is an interesting intersection of games. Why? Is what I want to know. Not that I'm happy for the why, but why?
Yes. So yeah, Thomas and I both went to the same art school, Canterbury Fine Arts represent. We both didn't know each other there though, because we were like 2 years apart or something. I knew of him though, because he had a really annoying artwork, like a video data mosh thing in a room so when I was in second year, because I like to stay late and just like work on stuff, and I just like hear this like weird noise from the gallery for like a week. It was so annoying. So I knew of him from that, but then we were inspired by our time at art school. That's why we wanted to make a game set at art school. And then why it became sort of a mystery dating game was that, as I said earlier, it was kind of like a weird depression sim, because we were sort of like dealing with our own thoughts, residual thoughts about art school. When we put Shelf Life in the bin for a year and then we came back to it, we're like, okay, well, what's interesting about this? We love the setting, we love the art style, we love some of the characters. We were interested in doing dating sim elements already. That was already in the previous version. And it was just, I can't really remember exactly, but I think it was when Thomas was doing like a mentorship with games producer, was it with Sam Cook? Or was it with
Sam Cook
else?
and Elaine yourself from Artifact 5?
Yeah.
So like one of another local game dev who's got a studio based in Canada, actually, through the New Zealand Film Commission, we got set up with them to mentor us. And we'd never talked to a game designer before, so this was kind of like, part of the reason why we're so terrible and have taken so long is because we artists don't know how to make game. So we've been learning as we go, right? And there's all these like roles and sort of technical things that we pick up on, but we'd love to kind of like reinvent the wheel, especially if left to our own devices. So getting a mentorship helped a lot. And talking to a game designer, you get asked questions like, what's the genre? Like, what are you actually trying to do? Do you think, who are your audience? Who are your players? Who's going to play this? And some of those questions cause, they're very useful and kind of practical questions to be asked, cause you to have a minor crisis and be like, oh, okay, we're just sort of making slop. Can we form a sandcastle out of this slop? And I think we were kind of at a crossroads where it could have become maybe like a pure visual novel, and we could have really shaved quite a lot of mechanics and content out of it. And I think that also would have been a fine path to go down. Or let's make it more of an adventure game, more of a detective game, something with some puzzle solving or some sort of like deduction or some kind of logic, just a little bit more for the player to do. And also then it kind of like sits in a genre space a little bit more nicely. So we were kind of like looking a little bit at, what do players kind of want? And I think also it was about us reinvigorating our interest in the thing too. Because like Nate said, we post art school, we'd had, different kinds of feelings about what that experience was like. Going out into the world, I was working as a graphic designer and Nate had office jobs and things too. We were kind of like looking back on our time as the years went on a little bit more fondly, maybe instead of kind of thinking about how it was, we were both having a cool depression time. We were kind of like, oh yeah, there was some funny, interesting and kind of appealing things about art school that maybe we'd like to bring those to the fore instead. So that I think more playfulness came in to it when we revisited it from that point.
And it is an interesting take, and I must admit it's got me more interested in dating sims. I find some of the traditional dating sims okay, but they are. I won't often be like, oh, I'm going to sit down and play a dating sim. But I like that this throws in some of the more interactive elements, plus the cool art style and the ability to kind of move around and do different things. And Also, the fact that you've got a cast of characters who are completely queer, non-binary, gay, pansexual, bisexual. Like it feels like everyone's there, but you've done the wonderful thing that a lot of queer game developers are doing, which is you've got characters who just are. Like, it's not like, this is not this character coming out as non-binary. The character's just non-binary. This character is just bisexual. And it's just, and I imagine everyone in art school is dating each other anyway. So, I mean, so what have you learnt along the way though, right? You sort of said you've had some mentoring behind this one as well. Like, what have been the challenges that you've really learnt from that have really shaped who you are as game devs and designers?
For us, it was, and I think for anyone listening who wants to get into game dev and stuff, one of the main things you learn is that, like, whether you kind of want to be or not, if you're in the indie game space, you are going to be like a small business owner / entrepreneur. And that has like 50% or more of what you're going to be doing is like stuff in that sphere. A lot of the time you aren't going to be just like working on the game and kind of fulfilling your creative passion. I mean, we're in a really like lucky position, I think, to be kind of incubated by the New Zealand Centre of Digital Excellence, right? So I mentioned before we had some support from the New Zealand Film Commission. They've kind of stopped supporting games as the New Zealand Centre of Digital Excellence kind of stepped into that space. And they have a really like sort of holistic way of helping out teams, obviously through funding, but even equally as important, or arguably more importantly than that, they have a lot of workshops and mentorships and opportunities, travel grants, things like that help you on the kind of business side, which, like, you know, I think when we were first starting out, we were kind of like, we're artists. We're just going to like stay at home and kind of like make the thing. We don't need to worry about, you know, being financially viable or kind of figuring out our path to market or like who's going to play this or, you know, how it's even going to come to fruition. I think, you know, after kind of like getting these sort of like various support people in place and mentors, we kind of figured, you know, like you've got to kind of run it a little bit more sensibly than that. You know, you need to kind of like have all of your ducks in a row, eggs in a basket, something. Like, I think our ducks were everywhere. We didn't have a basket, like, you know, to begin with. So I think that was probably the biggest learning for us, was like how to run a team, how to be sort of like sensible without, you know, how to make a spreadsheet, right? How to make a bunch of good spreadsheets, because there's a lot of that going on outside of the creative, fulfilling pleasure of just making art or, you know, just working an engine on the project itself.
There's always the thing of like, you can get advice from other people so that you don't make the same mistakes as them, but sometimes it's quite good to make your own mistakes because it really like solidifies the learning. I think that like the biggest thing we learned is that you should never try to make something too big as your first game. You should always be doing like maybe like a bunch of game jams where you're just making something over a weekend that like maybe is less than an hour's worth of gameplay. So yeah, like we've learned so much about that just after toiling for years and years on the same project, because the original version of Shelf Life as well had so much scope that was like not even like physically possible for us to make, and also just so intangible, because there was an element where the previous version you'd like go into dream worlds, but they didn't really relate to the plot at all, which is why when we remade it, we're like, okay, the character's an art psychic, and that sort of like when you're going into these art worlds and it's all mixed media, that has the essence of what we were trying to do with these dream worlds, but it actually serves the story and like makes sense. I guess we learnt a bit about, like, as Thomas talked about earlier, being less precious about stuff and being less like strict. And if you don't like something, like as a collaboration team, if you don't like something, you can't just say no. You have to explain no why. Or if you want to do something and the other person is not too interested, then you have to like sell it to each other, I suppose.
I am interested though. I think you're probably the first indie studio we've spoken to who have got 2 projects on the go. Are these simultaneous projects, or do you kind of have to be like, all right, we're doing Small Town Emo for the next 3 months, and then we'll do Shelf Life for the 3 months after that, or are you developing them like in tandem? Like how is that working?
It's very difficult to do 2 at once, because there's the thing of like, oh, I like doing, because some people work well when they're doing two projects, because when they like get burnt out on one, they do the other one, and then it sort of like flows into each other. But for us, there's the thing of like, there's these two projects, but then there's also, work as well. So you're kind of like, then there's three things that you have to juggle, which makes it harder. I think that for these two projects, they kind of do need to be worked on separately. It's never worked for us where we're doing like 3 days a week of this and 2 days a week of this. It's never worked. It's just, once you've got the focus in on a project, it's really hard sometimes to pivot between the two.
My analogy for it, which is probably not that funny, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I thought about it in the shower before the podcast. Here we go. With having more than one project on the go as a small team, I think of it as if like I'm a crazy cat lady with like 100 cats and I can't love all of them. I can't treat them all as well as I should. My house is in shambles. You need less cats. Like, it's just not going to work. I need to focus on one of my cats at a time, take it to the vet, treat it nicely. I think two games for a team as small as ours is about 100 cats worth of games. And I think we need the focus, I think, for us. But that's part of the reason why we've been able to get, or at least we intend to get better at having spreadsheets and schedules and sprint meetings and structure, because the cats, you can't manage them. They're just out of control.
Those poor cats.
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. So what's in the pipeline for Shelf Life then? So it sounds like the focus is Small Town Emo at the moment, but what is the plan to continue?
The plan at this stage is that we're going to have, so we did a play test in December last year where we had a bunch of people on Steam give it a go and give us lots of really good feedback. And we're going to do another play test in June-ish because with the demo that you've played previously, it's got more of the dating sim stuff and less of the detective mechanics were in there. So this new version is going to have hopefully a better mix of both of them. So once that's out, we'll get some feedback and then go from there. We're kind of in the phase where we're just like pitching a lot as well and trying to, investors wanted, trying to get some big daddy dollars so that we can fully finish it maybe. But we'll see. It really depends. Like if Small Town Emo gets finished and it pops off and people really like that, then that's also going to be a very different world of what is possible for us. So it's kind of in flux at the moment.
I guess to that end though, how can people support you at the moment and continue to follow the process? Do you have any Kickstarter, Patreon, anything like that going on to kind of get where people can support the game, or is it more just follow us and wishlist us to motivate us?
Following and wishlisting is honestly the best thing that you can do for indie teams. When you're looking for like publish funding, they are going to ask you how many wish lists you have, and if you've already like got a lot yourself, then that's opened so many doors for you. At this stage, we're not looking at crowdfunding just because that's like a whole thing that you have to like manage. That would be our like last option if everything else fell through, or an option that we would go down if the games were already finished, so that there was less risk for the people backing and for us.
Find us on social media and like our videos with my dad in them. He needs a win. We want to.
So they are so cute.
Yeah,
I love your dad's the best. Seriously, go follow the Instagram and TikTok. It's TikTok as well, right?
Yeah. We're actually really young and cool and fresh on TikTok, and not at all boomery. And we know what all the cool memes are, I swear. But I think, like Nate was saying, wish lists. If for any indie team, it's going to be wish lists. But I think visible support means a lot, right? And if you can sign up for playtests or offer assistance in that way, if you're a person who's passionate about indie games, I think teams are often looking for people to test and give unbiased feedback. Sometimes it's so useful to hear, a little bit of negative feedback actually, because when you're putting the game in front of people who are sort of like friends of yours, they're often like a little bit shy to say something critical, right? So that's worth a lot too.
Incredible. Well, we will definitely include all of the links to all of the socials and your Steam pages and your itch pages. And everyone, please get along. And like I said, there's no Shelf Life demo out there publicly at the moment, but Small Town Emo definitely is. And it sounds like that could be one to go in and dive into, because that maybe you'll get to complete the experience very, very soon.
I also just realized that my playtester chances have been dashed because I'm definitely not unbiased. Sorry. I was hearing you talking about playtesting and I was like, oh, I realized, oh no, I'm biased.
As long as you can, if you can be a bit mean, you can
be mean to this face. You could be mean to this face. You could
very
I could take
easily. Yeah, don't stress.
Thank you. It's been so much fun to catch up with you. We really do wish you all of the best in this continued journey. And hey, you'll have me bothering you on Discord along with everyone else going, when's it coming? It's doing Halloween. I want the game right now. So,
and you'll have me bullying you while I play test.
Yeah.
This actually sucks, by the way.
You
You want it mean? I'll show you.
Yeah. The villain of the playtesters. Yeah.
It's all right. There's got to be one.
well, thank you guys and best of luck.
It was so good to see you guys again.
Jeez, it's good to catch up with old friends, isn't
Good
it?
to see them again.
Good to see them. Good to see them. Been all over the world.
Yeah, I know.
San Francisco,
What the hell have
everything.
we been doing?
They've, well, you know what? Sometimes, when I talk to people who are doing these amazing creative things, I'm like, what have I done with my life?
You've become friends with me.
What have I done with my life? That's the question I will continue to ask over and over and over again. But
Well, you stopped drinking as much, so
I know. Hey, 2 weeks in, everyone. I'm sleeping better and my poos are like Christmas
my God.
presents. So it's just wonderful. I stole that line from someone else, so it's a non-original
I don't
joke.
even know what it means. Expected? Coming down the
Look,
chimney?
I've said this to you over and over again. When you reach a certain age, there is nothing better than waking up and taking a good crap.
Yes. I keep blocking it out of my memory. You're going to
Yeah,
have
well,
to
blocking
51st
is the
date it.
problem. So, but anyway,
Not on the FNAF.
I know, but just to cap that all off, I will say, and something I forgot to do at the top of the show, big shout out, by the way, to all of our BQN podcast network patrons, especially to this show's associate producer,
Sam Johnson.
Sam Johnson. It is incredible that the gayest podcast out there has a heterosexual man as its associate producer, but we love you, Sam.
Listen, if we support art, we support art.
He
Doesn't
does.
matter.
He does.
It's always
And
good.
Sam is just like the biggest supporter and lover of this show, and I haven't actually shared with you all the memes he keeps making of you.
Oh my God,
But
yes, please. I need something to post.
Yeah. And remember that if you would like to support this and other podcasts on the BQN network, you can become a patron by heading to patreon.com/BQN. For as little as $1 to $2 a month, you can enjoy early release of our podcasts. And for about $5 a month, you can be a part of our monthly Zooms. And you also get our gameplay videos for Bargain Bin Gamer. And I also am posting the uncut versions, unedited versions of our episodes on Patreon as well.
And there also might be a little sneaky little extra edition for some extra media content that we may or may not have made yesterday that also might be making an appearance. So if you want to see how really, really terrible I am at acting, which is bad, by the way, sign up to Patreon.
Yeah, please do. Please do. It does help us keep bringing the shows. It helps keep them free. All of our content all the premium content is all absolutely free. It's really important because a lot of the stuff that we use to make the shows costs money. And so, this just kind of helps keep us going and means that we can kind of keep improving the quality. So thank you to all of our patrons. And you don't always have to support financially. The other thing that helps us a lot as well is, the guys were just talking about how wish listing and all that helps devs. For us, it's thumbs up, it's subscriptions, it's 5-star reviews on your podcast platforms, and sharing the episode with your friends. That does kind of help boost the show and get the algorithm going. Oi,
the algorithm.
Oi, like this. You should show it to someone else.
I don't like that.
No, okay.
I don't like when you do other voices.
I know. Just who I am. I'm just a character person. Anyway, that has been it. It's been good. I've had fun. Have you had fun?
I've had a great day, especially after my 2-hour wait to vote. I'm in a way better mood than I was before.
Excellent. That's what time with my effervescent self will do.
I was thinking it was more hanging out with the FNAF guys, but yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah, sure. They've been lovely. They were lovely. They were great. Okay. Well, let's call it there. So until next time, I've been Davey.
And I've been Mitch.
And we've been The
Bargain
Bargain Bin
Bin
Gamers.
Gamers.
Yes. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you give it a big thumbs up on YouTube or follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast from and leave us a 5-star review. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky and follow along on our live Twitch streams. You can also continue the conversation in our BQN podcast Discord by clicking the link in the episode description. Don't forget that the Bargain Bin Gamer is part of a larger network of podcasts called the BQN. You can support this and other BQN programs by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/BQN. We'd love to hear your feedback on the episode. Leave us a comment on YouTube or send us an email to bargainbingamer, GAYMER, @gmail.com. Until next time, au revoir.
Double T Media.